Well, the designers at FFG have done it again. It's been another month, and we have our next X-Men hero revealed. And much to very few people's surprise, it is in fact the weather goddess, Storm. And I'm really starting to sound like a broken record here, but I cannot believe how awesome she looks. And I'm very excited to be talking about her, and I think a lot of people are going to be very excited to play her. So let's just dive right into this. I don't want to waste a second. She looks amazing. So on her alter ego side, she is Aurora Monroe, 3 recovery, 6 hand size, 10 hit points, so nothing weird there. And her ability is that she begins the game with a weather deck. And so that immediately makes you think of Doctor Strange. She's the only other hero with a separate deck. But don't let that frighten you if you're not a fan of Doctor Strange. Her weather deck is really interesting and isn't going to take over her whole gameplay in the same way that the Invocation deck does for Doctor Strange. Now, her setup ability is that you choose a support from the weather deck and put it into play. We'll get into it more, but just briefly, there are 4 cards in her weather deck that are support cards, and from the start of the game, there will always be 1 in play. In her hero form, she is Storm. She has 1 thwart, 2 attack, 1 defense, X-Men traded, and her ability is weather control. As an action, you can swap your weather support in play with a support of your choice from the weather deck, and then you get to resolve the special ability on your weather support in play, and you can only do that once per round. So let's take a look at one of the weather supports here so you have a better idea of what's happening. It is simply a card that comes into play, no cost. You just reveal it from the deck whenever you choose to use that ability. Is weather traded as the permanent keyword, but the cards are swapped in and out, so that is fine. And the Thunderstorm ability is that each character gets +1 attack, and the special ability is deal 2 damage to an enemy. So when you use Storm's weather control ability, you swap the card and then you activate the special. So think kind of like Ant-Man when you change forms and you get to either deal damage or remove a threat. This works very similarly where you get that 2 damage immediately. And then each character getting +1 attack is a passive effect that will continue as long as this card is in play. And the very interesting thing to note here is that it says each character, that's heroes, allies, all the different players at the table, and the villain and the minions. Everybody is getting this benefit because weather doesn't care. It's just the weather. We look at the next one here, Hurricane. Each character gains Retaliate 1, and the special here is to remove 2 threat from a scheme. You'll remember she only has 1 thwart and 2 attack, but we see that this is a way to increase her thwarting, that she's going to be able to remove 2 threat from a scheme whenever she flips into Hurricane. Clear Skies simply gives every character Stalwart, and the special is that it lets you draw a card. Now, giving the villains and the minions Stalwart might not sound appealing, but I think that's going to be fine because so many of the newer villains already have Stalwart and Steady as it is. So really, this is going to be more a benefit for you. But if you are including a lot of Stun and Confuse, I suppose you won't necessarily want to give the villain Stalwart at the wrong time. And that's going to be a big thing about Storm's gameplay, is she is all about timing. Switching these weather cards in and out, and when you choose to do that is going to be very, very important as to how you play her. And the final weather card is Blizzard. Each character gets -1 attack, and the special is that you choose a non-elite minion, and until the end of the round, you get to treat that minion's text box as if it were blank, similar to the new Vivian ally. So these are the 4 weather cards, and it's totally up to you which one you have in play. You start with one in play from the start of the game, so be careful not to start with the one that you're hoping to trigger. For example, if you don't really care about characters having less attack, you might start the game with Blizzard in play, and then as soon as you go into hero form, you might flip to Clear Sky so that you get to draw a card. So like I said, a big part of her game is going to be deciding when and which card to use. For example, you don't want to go into the villain phase with Thunderstorm giving all the villains and minions +1 attack. So it's going to be important to avoid leaving yourself in a tough situation, or for example, if you did do that, you might want to flip to alter ego so you're not getting attacked. So you really need to think about that. So she does not play in nearly as a straightforward manner as, say, Wolverine. Probably the polar opposite, actually. She has more of a spectrum feel to her, where you really want to plan your turn and play your cards accordingly. Let's look at the first card in her actual hero kit, Weather Goddess, a 0-cost event. Is a hero action, swap your weather support in play with a support of your choice from the weather deck. Resolve the special ability on your weather support in play. So it's the exact same thing as her weather control power. It's simply allowing you to do it more than once per turn. Similar to Spectrum, how she has the Speed of Light card that allows you to change your energy form. This does a similar thing, and I'm really hoping that there's at least 2 copies, if not 3, in her deck, because it's going to be a lot of fun to swap the weather in and out. Plus the idea of the weather constantly shifting from hurricane to blizzard to clear skies in a matter of moments is sort of hilarious to me. Next, we have a 2-cost upgrade, Storm's Crown. She gets +1 thwart, so now she's thwarting for a more respectable 2. And it also provides a hero resource. You exhaust this and you generate the printed resource on your weather support. Of the 4 weather cards, each resource is represented, so if you do care about a certain type of resource, you'll have access to it if you put the right one in play. But I'm really enjoying seeing these resource cards that also give some sort of other benefit besides just being a resource. That was becoming a real big criticism there for a while. Nebula's Ship and then Vision's Gemstone being sort of boring cards, just 2-cost upgrades that provide a resource and that's all. It looks like they're going in slightly more interesting directions with these, so that's nice. Here we see Storm's Cape. A 3-cost upgrade, a little pricey. Storm gets +1 defense and gains the aerial trait. I was a little disappointed to see that she didn't have aerial built into her hero. She's very much a flyer. You always see her in the air, but they are reluctant to pass that out. Spectrum's still the only one that has it printed on her form, though Ironheart and Nova get it fairly easily. So it's just disappointing a little bit because there are so many cool aerial cards now, and I'm myself at least am very reluctant to include them in a deck for a hero that can only get aerial off of 1 card. But either way, here it is, plus it's giving her defense up to 2, and it also has a hero response. After you resolve the special ability on your weather support, you get to exhaust the cape and ready Storm. So similar to Adam Warlock's cape that allows him to ready when he uses his ability, this is the same thing. And also similar to Adam Warlock, her stats aren't all that great, but it is always nice to ready even if you're not going to do too much with it. Now we'll look at one of her events, a 2-cost Torrential Rain. It is a superpower traded in thwart. We're going to be saying this with every single X-Men that comes out, I think, but there's a lot of superpower cards in these decks, so you are going to want to include Deft Focus to help pay for some of these. Now, this is her thwarting action. Remove 3 threat from among schemes in play. If Hurricane is in play, resolve its special ability, and as a reminder, Hurricane is the one that lets you remove 2 threat from a scheme. So removing 3 threat for 2 is so-so at best, but it is nice that it allows you to split the threat removal up among schemes. And then if you did put Hurricane in play before you played this, you would also get to remove another 2 threat from a scheme. So again, a lot of fun just trying to time when to put these cards into play. You know, if you're planning on playing Torrential Rain, you might want to get Hurricane out, but make sure you realize that you're also giving everybody Retaliate 1, whether or not that matters to you. So you really have to pay attention to this kind of stuff. I think it's going to be really cool. And a card I'm very excited about here, Flash Freeze, a 1-cost event. This is her defense card. When the villain attacks you, the villain and each minion engaged with you gets -3 attack while attacking you this phase. That's amazing, giving the villain and all the minions -3 attack. You're definitely going to be able to ignore all the minions, and most villains aren't going to hit you too much harder than that. So that's going to be nice. And it is defense traded, so it triggers all your defense stuff, and you don't have to exhaust, so that's nice too. And it says if Blizzard is in play, resolve its special ability, and Blizzard is the one that lets you blank a non-elite minion, but it's also giving each character -1 attack already. So really, Flash Freeze, most of the time, hopefully, is going to be giving everybody -4 attack while they're attacking you. So you're really going to be able to ignore everything that's coming your way. And if there's a non-elite minion that's bugging you, you can go ahead and blank its text box. So I think this is a great, great card, and it's going to lead to some fun villain phases. And then she has another event here, a 3-cost Blast of Wind, superpower, hero action, choose a player, deal 3 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with that player. Resolve the special ability of your weather support. So this one isn't tied directly to one of the specific weather supports. Now, whether or not she has events that are tied to Clear Skies and Thunderstorm, we don't know. We haven't seen them. So this card is interesting because for 3 resources, you're only dealing 3 damage to the villain, and you are also hitting all the minions with a certain player for 3. So this one's pretty situational in that if there's not a lot of minions in play or any, 3's a lot to pay. Now you are getting to trigger the special ability of your weather support. So it's 3 to deal 3 damage to the villain, any minions in play, and either draw a card, remove 2 threat, deal 2 more damage, or blank a non-elite minion. So I like the versatility of this card. Even if it's a bit pricey, you're still going to be able to get some added value from it, depending on which weather support. And again, you choose if you want to put a certain one in play before you play this card, you're going to be able to do that. I don't want to keep harping on it, but I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Plus the art on her card seems particularly good this time around. So that's everything we've seen from Storm so far. Just a very different kind of hero. She feels like a form changer, even though she really isn't technically changing forms. But she gives that sort of same timing vibe where you have to be very careful in how you do things. And she's going to give you a lot to think about. This is not going to be a hero that you're just going to throw on the table and play very well on the first try. Unlike Wolverine, I think is going to be pretty straightforward and easy to know how to pilot. Storm's going to be a lot of fun to explore. I also think she's going to play well in all of the aspects because her weather cards are so versatile. She has access to damage. She has access to threat removal. She can really do a little bit of everything. And the fact that the weather cards affect the whole table might make her particularly interesting in multiplayer, but that's also going to make it harder to time things. It's one thing to manage whether or not you want every character to have retaliate for what you're doing, but if there are 3 other players at the table, it's going to be a lot harder to plan for that. So going to make for some very interesting table talk and a lot of fun. I just continue to be so impressed with these X-Men, but as impressed as I am with Storm, I'm even way more impressed with these leadership cards we are about to look at. So the first one is a 1-cost event called To Me, My X-Men. Your identity has to have the X-Men trait to play it. And it says hero action, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an X-Men ally and put it into play. If that ally is still in play at the end of the phase, add it to your hand. This card is so much better than Sneak Attack. It's just silly that they even bothered to make Sneak Attack in the first place. That's always been a disappointing event where you had to have Sneak Attack in your hand and the ally at the same time, and just making it work just never felt satisfying because it's just so hard to do. The concept is fine, but it just never really seemed to work, at least not for me. Now, To Be My X-Men does have a similar risk in that you have to have an ally in the top 5 cards, so you might play this and nothing happens. But I think the risk is much more well rewarded here, because if it does happen, you get to put that ally into play, and then at the end of the phase, it's adding it to your hand. So instead of just going away, you played it, did a thing, and then it got discarded. With Sneak Attack, you get to bring it into play, get its comes into play ability, attack or thwart with it, and then after you draw up to your hand size, you're going to then add it to your hand. So it's going to be an extra card in your hand for the next turn. This is going to be particularly good in Cyclops, because Scott Summers' alter ego text says that you may include X-Men allies from any aspect in your deck. So he is always going to have all the best X-Men, and he's always going to have access to all of the enters play abilities. For example, Polaris, you could play To Me My X-Men, pop her out, give somebody a tough status, and then thwart or attack with her, and the next turn you could play her again and give another tough status. Same with Professor X, pop him in, confuse somebody. Or Beast is going to be a lot of fun because he's going to come out, thwart or attack for 2, add resources to your hand, which you can use to then play another card. And then you could play Beast again next turn. I can't even believe how excited I am for this. And I also have to say, having looked at the rest of these leadership cards, I'm finding it very hard to find a compelling reason to play Scott Summers in anything other than leadership, because it's just going to work so incredibly well for him. But I'm surprisingly okay with that. One of my favorite things about this game is that the heroes typically play pretty well in all the aspects, or at least a few of them. But the X-Men aren't usually particularly well-rounded. They are very well-positioned within the team to do what they are supposed to do. And Scott is supposed to lead the team. Wolverine is supposed to deal damage. So I'm sure there will be interesting builds for the X-Men in multiple aspects, but at least for Scott, I'm blue all the way for at least the foreseeable future. They showed us an awesome new ally in Mirage, Danny Moonstar, a very cool character. 3-cost ally, 2 thwart and 1 attack, only 2 health. She is psionic traded, which will matter here. We'll talk about it in a second. X-Men, of course. In response, after Mirage enters play, choose an enemy whose scheme is less than Mirage's thwart. Stun that enemy. So unlike Mockingbird, who can just come in and stun the villain no problem, Mirage has a pretty particular caveat here where the villain has to have lower scheme than her thwart. Her thwart's only 2. So basically, if the villain has 1 scheme, she can go ahead and stun it. Now, it doesn't have to be the villain, but obviously that's usually preferable. And I went ahead and looked, and on standard, about half the villains would get stunned on their first stage, and the other half start with 2 or higher. But because of the way Danger Room works, if you wanted to, and you play Mirage in your alter ego form, you could exhaust Danger Room to search for Danger Room training and put that on Mirage before you trigger her response, and then her thwart would be 3, so she would be stunning villains of scheme 1 or 2, And at that point, that gets almost everybody in standard and still a lot of them in expert. So it definitely requires a little more help, but she will be stunning a lot of the time. And if you do this little trick here, she's also going to be thwarting for 3, and she's going to have 3 health. So that is going to be amazing. And there's one more important thing here, is because she has the psionic trait, while you're in alter ego using the danger room, why don't you go ahead and use Cerebro to search your entire deck for an XMen ally to add to your hand. So there is just so much going on with these cards and the way they work together. And I just continue to be blown away by how integrated these designs are getting, and particularly the XMen. They feel so team oriented. And we see here, it really matters if you're playing Mirage in particular, because she's psionic and because she works with Cerebro. You know, we've been including allies in our deck from day one, and you just grab the ones that seem useful for their abilities or whatever. But here, it just, the XMen just work together so well. It really matters which allies you choose. And they've really brought out that XMen flavor of where they just work together so well. And I just couldn't be happier. I am so excited for these loops that these characters create and how much fun it's going to be. Another awesome ally, 2-cost Pixie. 1 thwart, 2 attack with 2 consequential, and she only has 2 health, so if you attack with her, she's going away. She has the aerial trait and XMen, and her ability is after you play Pixie from your hand, you get to add an XMen ally from your discard pile to your hand. This is going to be so useful. I just got done saying how team-oriented they were. I don't think you're going to see a lot of XMen decks that don't run a lot of allies, because that just wouldn't feel very XMen. And clearly they want you to play that way. And this is just another very helpful tool in your kit. You're going to be able to grab whichever the best XMen ally is for the situation in your discard pile and bring it right back. Now, they did balance her pretty well by making her a play from your hand ability. You can't do any kind of make the call or rapid response shenanigans here to do it over and over again. But still, just even once per deck pass, that is going to be so, so nice. Get a card back into your hand, and then she thwarts for 1 and takes a hit for you. Very, very cool. Now, a slightly less exciting card, but still decent. 1-cost upgrade leadership skill. We saw the red one with Wolverine, and now we're getting blue, so it looks like we're getting 1 of each. It comes in with 3 counters on it. You can only have 1 in play at a time. And it says when an ally makes a basic thwart or basic attack action, remove a counter from here, and then that ally gets +1 thwart and +1 attack for that action. So basically, you're paying 1, and then you're going to get 3 more thwart or 3 more attack out of your allies, and that's fine. It's nice that you can just play this before you have an ally. It's not like an upgrade that you have to have the ally in play already. You can just have this out there, and then when anybody is using an ally anywhere on the table, if you want to add a thwart or an attack to it, you can. And sometimes 1 more is just what you need to get the job done. So for 1, I think this is a perfectly acceptable card, especially for all the allies we're going to be running. It's going to have its uses. It's not particularly exciting, but it is useful. Now, this card is particularly exciting. Uncanny XMen, a 3-cost support. It is a team card. It's the 3rd team card we've seen. We had Mighty Avengers, which was really good, and we had Guardians of the Galaxy, which was really good. And this one is also really good. You can play it under any player's control, and that is nice. You can only have 1 team card per player. And it says each of your XMen allies gets +1 hit point. Very nice. And if each of your characters has the XMen trait, each of your XMen allies costs 1 fewer resource to play. This card is insane. This card is going to pay for itself so fast. I just got done saying how you're going to be using allies in all these decks because this is how the XMen run, and they're just giving you all the tools you need to do it. It's going to be so, so nice getting these cards for 1 fewer resource. For example, Pixie here, instead of paying 2, you only pay 1 to bring her into play, and then you get another XMen ally into your hand that also costs 1 less. You don't have to exhaust Uncanny XMen. There is no limit. You simply get to have cheaper allies. You know, I don't usually include more than 1 copy of a card that I can't have more than 1 in play of, but I think it's worth including 3 Uncanny XMens because you're going to want to see this thing as early as possible. And the fact that you can play under any player's control. If you're playing in a group and everybody's playing XMen, why not pass them out? Everybody's going to be able to get use from this. Now, there is one minor downside to this card. The fact that it requires every character that you have to have the XMen trait means it won't work in Alter Ego because they're not XMen, they're mutants. So you can't double this up with Danger Room to get a 1-cost discount on an XMen ally and then also go get a training card and play it for free. So that's a little sad, but at the same time, you kind of get it. It's fine. Either way, if you play the ally in Alter Ego, you can get the discount on the Danger Room. If you play it in hero form, you can get the discount on Uncanny. So it's good either way, but they don't work together. So we'll have to keep that in mind when we play this card. And also the extra hit point is going to be nice too. I kind of glossed over that, but that's going to be really helpful because you could still play team training if you really wanted to. So you could really beef them up, especially if you're running Wolverine, because you're going to want to keep him alive as long as possible. So between Uncanny XMen giving him an extra hit point, and if you do get the Danger Room training on him, or the red one, actually I think they all add a hit point, he's going to be attacking for 4. He's going to have 6 health, and since he heals 1 every turn, he's basically going to be attacking for 4 every round for the rest of the game. That's going to be very, very fun and very nice. So all of those leadership cards obviously can play in anybody, but especially in Cyclops is going to be just ridiculous how fun and how powerful that is going to be. It just cannot get here fast enough. We also got another very interesting and useful basic ally, 2-cost Forge. Nice to see him. 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 health. And it says that after he enters play, you get to search your deck and discard pile for an XMen or XForce support and add it to your hand. So the fact that you get to tutor your whole deck and discard pile to pull one of those out is incredibly nice. Now, we haven't seen any XForce supports yet, but it's nice to know that they are on their way. And there are currently some very useful XMen supports out there. Cerebro, Danger Room, and Utopia are cards I think you're going to see play in pretty much every XMen deck. Cerebro and Utopia almost certainly. Maybe not every deck's going to run the Danger Room and the training cards. I'm very excited for that, so we'll have to see. But I think the ability to just go get Cerebro and Utopia alone is going to be very, very helpful. And he is an enters play, so you can do make the call and rapid response shenanigans if you have a lot of those in your deck and you just want to go find him as quickly as you can. Every time he pops into play, you can go get another one. So he's going to be pretty much an auto include, I think, in a lot of X-Men decks. We also saw the XJet, a 3-cost support, so something Forge could go find if he wanted to. It is a vehicle and it's a resource. Exhaust the XJet, generate a wild resource for a player whose identity has the X-Men trait. So yet another in this new design philosophy on these unique cards like the Champions Mobile Bunker and the Web of Life and Destiny, that even though it's unique, only one person can have it. It's usable for anybody else at the table that also might have liked to have played that card. So very clever there. So the X-Men sort of got their own Quinn carrier. The difference here, however, is with the Quinn carrier, you could never play it in Alter Ego. The XJet here, you're not going to be able to use it in Alter Ego, at least not for yourself, because you're not going to have the X-Men trait when you're flipped down. So yet another thing we have to kind of keep an eye on. And one thing I'm really thinking is Meditation is going to be a very, very useful card for the X-Men. You know, we have the XJet that costs 3, and we have the Uncanny XMen that costs 3. You're going to want to get these cards out immediately. And there's a lot of expensive allies that you could use Meditation to pay for as well. So I think that's a card I've certainly got my eye on to play in an X-Men deck to get these cards on the table as quickly as possible. Also continuing the trend of revealing the next modular encounter set, and this one looks so terrifying. It's the Shadow King, and if you know X-Men comics, you know it should be terrifying. He probably could have been a villain in his own right. He has 3 scheme, 3 attack, 6 health. He is elite, so no shenanigans, and psionic. And when he's revealed, you're going to search the encounter deck and discard pile for a copy of the Possessed attachment and reveal it. So let's look at that really quick. Possessed is going to come out, and it's going to go on your ally with the lowest thwart, and it's going to turn that ally into a minion. The problem is, if you don't happen to have any allies, Possessed is going to gain Surge. So the Shadow King is going to come out, 3 scheme, 3 attack, 6 health minion, and he's either going to take one of your allies and turn it into a minion, or he's going to Surge. So either way, it's just bad. And if he does take one of your allies, until you kill it, you can't even damage the Shadow King. So he's going to be just such a menace. I love modular encounter sets, but I don't always love the hardest ones, and this one looks really scary. Now, we haven't seen 3 of the cards, but I can only imagine they only make him worse. And I don't like this design trend of cards like this and Enchantress, that they come out and they also bring another card with them that does something incredibly annoying. That's just, no thank you. But I'm very excited to see the character. It makes sense for Storm, is part of her origin story, and like I said, he's a big X-Men villain in his own right. So glad to see him in the game. And that's it for the Storm announcement. just another winner. I can't believe how good they are doing with these X-Men. They all look amazingly fun. And it's also amazing that now we have Colossus and Kitty, Cyclops and Jean, and Wolverine and Storm. They are not being shy about bringing out all of the most popular X-Men. You know, we're going to get a Justice one and a Protection one still in this wave, and I could easily see that being Gambit and Rogue. Rogue being Protection and Gambit being Justice. That makes perfectly fine sense for those heroes. And if they do that, I mean, there are plenty of other popular X-Men, but they've pretty much hit all the biggest names right out of the gate. So this idea that I think a few of us have thrown around that they're going to save some of the heavy hitters for later. I mean, there's still Nightcrawler, Iceman, Beast, Professor X. Yeah, you're getting all the best ones right up front, and that is very exciting. So I want to thank you for joining me. If you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you like this type of content, I would super appreciate it. And let me know in the comments if you're as excited about Storm as I am. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I hope you'll join me next time we get up in game. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.